On a quiet summer evening in Bushey, a small town in Hertfordshire, England, the peace was shattered by a crime so brutal, so unexpected, that it sent shockwaves, not just through the local community, but across the entire country. Three women, a mother and her two daughters, were found murdered inside their own home, their lives cut short in an attack described by police as targeted, calculated, and horrifying. But what stunned the public even more was the weapon used, a crossbow. Welcome to the Crime Documentary. This was not just another tragic crime story. This was an act that left an entire nation grieving and asking, how could this happen? On July 9th, 2024, emergency services were called to a semi-detached house in Ashling Close, Bushey. Neighbours had reported unusual activity, shouting, the sound of commotion, and then silence. When officers forced their way inside, they were met with a scene of devastation. Lying within the walls of what should have been a safe family home were the lifeless bodies of 61-year-old Carol Hunt and her two daughters, 28-year-old Hannah and 25-year-old Louise. Each of them had been killed with a crossbow, an archaic but deadly weapon, one that immediately raised more questions than answers. Why would someone use a weapon like this? What was the motive? And who could be capable of such calculated violence? The moment the discovery was made, Hertfordshire police launched one of the most urgent and high-profile manhunts the county had ever seen. Officers believed the killer was still at large and potentially armed with a crossbow and other weapons. The public was warned to stay indoors. News channels across the UK interrupted broadcasts with breaking reports. The country was suddenly gripped by fear and disbelief. This wasn't just another violent crime. This was something different, something chilling. As news broke, the identities of the victims were revealed. Carol Hunt, the devoted wife of BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt, known for her warmth and kindness, Carol was described by friends as the glue that held the family together. Hannah Hunt, 28, a young woman with a bright future ahead of her, independent, ambitious, and loved dearly by those around her. Louise Hunt, 25, her sister, who had dreams and plans of her own. Like Hannah, she was described as joyful, full of life, and inseparable from her family. Together, they represented a loving, close-knit unit. And yet, within moments, their lives had been taken in the most brutal way possible. The reaction across Britain was immediate and overwhelming. People struggled to comprehend the scale of the tragedy. For many, the most heartbreaking detail was the connection to John Hunt, one of the most familiar voices in British sports broadcasting. Known for his passion and energy while calling horse races for BBC Radio 5 Live, John's world had been ripped apart in a single night. Tributes poured in from fellow commentators, jockeys, and listeners. Messages of support filled social media, and in Bushey, residents gathered outside the family home to light candles, leave flowers, and share their grief. This wasn't just a story about three murders. It was a story about a family destroyed and a community left broken. One of the most disturbing aspects of the case was the weapon itself, a crossbow. Unlike knives or firearms, crossbows are rarely seen in modern crimes. Yet they are capable of immense destruction, silent, powerful, and often lethal. In the UK, crossbows can be bought and owned legally with few restrictions, as long as the user is over 18. This raised an urgent question. How many others out there might be misusing such weapons? The use of a crossbow in this attack suggested premeditation. This was not a random act of violence. It was targeted, deliberate, and deeply personal. Within hours of the crime, police announced they were searching for 26-year-old Kyle Clifford. Clifford from Enfield in North London was quickly identified as the prime suspect. Armed officers and helicopters were deployed, roads were blocked, neighbours across Bushey were told to remain vigilant. The manhunt was on, and the entire nation was watching. This was just the beginning of a case that would come to be known as the Crossbow Killings in Bushey. 3 innocent women gone, a grieving husband and father left behind, a suspect on the run, and a community and country desperate for answers. In the next chapter, we'll step back and look at who the Hunt family were, the lives they led before tragedy struck, and how they came to cross paths with a man capable of such unimaginable violence. Before we dive into the crime and investigation, it's important to remember who the victims were, not as headlines, but as real people. Carol Hunt was the heart of her family. A devoted wife and mother, she was known for her warmth and generosity. Married to BBC horse racing commentator John Hunt, the two had built a beautiful life together, one filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. Their daughters, Hannah and Louise, were more than just young women with promising futures. They were best friends, sisters who leaned on each other, inseparable in their bond. Hannah, 28, worked in the healthcare sector. She was admired for her compassion and ambition, someone who wanted to make a difference. Louise, just 25, was a free spirit. Creative, kind-hearted, and always smiling, she was the light in every room she entered. Together, the Hunts were a picture of what many would call the perfect family. But as we've seen too many times in true crime cases, even the happiest homes can be touched by darkness. In the next chapter, we'll look at the man accused of destroying it all, Kyle Clifford. Who was Kyle Clifford? To many, he was just a name in a headline, but behind the mugshot was a troubled young man whose life had spiraled out of control. Clifford, just 26 years old, had once served in the British Army. But after leaving the service, he struggled with stability. Reports suggest he had issues managing relationships, controlling his temper, and finding direction. But what tied him to the Hunt family? Why would he become the prime suspect in their murders? The answer lay in his relationship with Hannah Hunt. Clifford was believed to have dated her in the past, but the relationship ended badly. For Hannah, it was about moving forward. For Clifford, it may have been the start of a dangerous obsession. This was no random attack. Police would later confirm that the killings were targeted. Clifford had chosen this family, and he had planned the attack carefully. What no one could yet answer was, why a crossbow? July 9th, 2024. A summer evening in Bushey. At some point between late afternoon and evening, Clifford allegedly entered the Hunt family home. Whether he broke in or was let in remains a chilling mystery. Inside, Carol, Hannah, and Louise were defenseless. Police reports suggest that Clifford came armed, not just with a crossbow, but possibly other weapons as well. What happened next was quick, violent, and deliberate. Each of the 3 women was attacked, with fatal injuries inflicted using the crossbow. There was no chance of survival. By the time neighbors became suspicious, the tragedy had already unfolded. When police arrived, they discovered a scene of horror. 3 women, gone in an instant, and the killer, now on the run. The moment Clifford was named as a suspect, one of the largest manhunts in Hertfordshire's history began. Armed police units swept through Bushey, helicopters scoured the countryside, roads were blocked. Clifford was believed to be dangerous and possibly still carrying the crossbow. Residents were told to lock their doors and stay inside. The usually peaceful town of Bushey now looked like a scene from a crime thriller. For hours, the question loomed, where was Clifford? By evening, police traced him to Enfield, North London. There, in a cemetery, the manhunt came to a dramatic end. Clifford was found with serious injuries, believed to have been self-inflicted. He was rushed to hospital, but the questions surrounding him remained. As the manhunt ended, attention shifted back to the Hunt family. The murders had left John Hunt utterly devastated. A man who had dedicated his life to bringing joy to millions of sports fans was now in unimaginable pain. Friends described him as broken. The BBC rallied around him. Listeners and colleagues sent thousands of messages of support. Meanwhile, the community in Bushey was in shock. Vigils were held, flowers piled high outside the family's home. Strangers stood side by side in tears, united in grief for three women many had never even met. This wasn't just about one family. This crime touched the nation, because it could have been anyone. In the days that followed, the tragedy sparked a national debate. Should crossbows be more tightly regulated in the UK? Currently, anyone over 18 can legally own a crossbow without needing a license. Critics argued this loophole allowed dangerous individuals to easily access lethal weapons. The government announced it was reviewing laws. Calls grew louder for tighter restrictions. But for the Hunt family, it was already too late. No law could undo the loss. The murders of Carol, Hannah, and Louise Hunt had become a turning point not only for one grieving family, but potentially for the entire nation. As Kyle Clifford remained in hospital under police guard, the case moved slowly toward justice. The Crown Prosecution Service prepared charges. The courts awaited the day Clifford would stand trial, and the Hunt family waited for answers. Though nothing could bring back their loved ones, the legacy of Carol, Hannah, and Louise lives on in the memories of those who loved them. For John Hunt, their loss is immeasurable, but so too is the love and respect the nation has shown him. The Crossbow Killings in Bushey were not just another headline. They were a reminder of how fragile life is and how violence can tear through even the happiest of families. For the Hunts, there will never truly be justice, because justice cannot bring back what was taken. But as Britain remembers their names, one thing is certain: their story will not be forgotten. Like and subscribe for more real crime stories, turn on notifications, because the next case might be even darker.